We're coming across loud and clear. The entire internet was broken today. Golly. All right, so we're making sure that we're working. Yeah, looks like we're coming in over on YouTube now. We've got our locals friends are here. What's going on? Rumble hopefully is cooking. Let's take a look over here. Are we playing? We're playing. All right, tremendous news. Hello, my friends. What a beautiful day it is. Hopefully you've been able to navigate the tubes successfully today. We're a little bit later than usual because of some tube problems, but we're live. It's great to be with you. We have a great stream planned ahead. Quick preview on what's coming up. Then we'll zoom in and get all the details. Here is the big news on the day. Victory out in Portland. You can see the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals has come back down and handed Trump a major win. And this has caught attention all over the place because it's about the National Guard. And now we've got two cases, the Gavin Newsom case and the Portland case, that are both aligning, saying the president obviously has the power to act as the president. And so big fat opinion came down today, and you can see it's 93 pagers. The majority decision is not that long, so we'll go through it. Some good details. They gave us a nice recitation of the facts here. So lots of explanation about the disturbances at the ICE facility in Portland and just how bad it is. And so we're going to start to see the Supreme Court need to come in here and clarify this, because I do believe it was the Seventh Circuit that I think had a different interpretation of this power. So we're going to have a lot of back and forth on this, no doubt about it, but the administration can chalk this up as a big victory, and we'll go into it. Then we'll turn our attention to what's happening with Comey, because he, of course, is being prosecuted out of the Eastern District of Virginia, and a bunch of activity on his case. And he's submitting motions to dismiss, motions for selective and vindictive prosecution, and all sorts of other things. But Halligan is also now moving, or starting the process of moving, to really disqualify James Comey's attorney, or to filter him out because he might be a co-conspirator. He might have been a witness in a lot of the underlying facts. And so Halligan is just coming out, man. We saw over the weekend that there are just firings like one after another out of the Eastern District of Virginia, and it's just very nice to see. So we'll go through that. We'll get the latest on what's happening with Comey. We've got him responding. Bunch of motions are coming out that we'll get to, and Trump had to comment on the Obama Comey scam. And so we'll get into all of that coming up very soon. Now, we also have this report over from the Oversight Committee. They dropped this one explaining, remember that prosecutor Acosta, Alexander Acosta, the first prosecutor who gave Epstein that sweetheart deal? Well, he came in and he talked to the Oversight Committee, and we had a lot of questions about that back from the 2000s, well, whenever that was. And now he came out and the transcripts are out, and the Oversight Committee is saying President Trump is completely exonerated. Okay, this guy came in, they had a bunch of conversations with him about what's happening, and they gave us the highlights from the transcripts, and it was a lot. It was about 200 pages of transcripts, 172 to be exact. So we'll hit some of the highlights, but there were some other juicy bits that came out of this, including the fact that this judge, remember this guy right here, Bruce Reinhart, he was the judge who approved the search warrant against Mar-a-Lago and President Trump. Oh, yeah. Well, guess where he showed up? Yeah, in the same deposition, in the Alexander Acosta deposition. And it turns out Epstein and Bruce Reinhart, the guy who approved the search warrant of Trump's residence, were pretty close, working in the same building and more. And so the news is talking about this. We've got Politico with a report, and we'll see what the latest is and hit all the highlights, my friends. And it is a beautiful day. We're very glad that you are with us today. And before we jump into things, there's no sponsor today, but I wanted to just mention and discuss sponsor philosophy just very briefly here, just so you kind of understand what's going on, so that we're transparent and accountable for all the things that we're doing here. But you may watch a lot of other long form content on the tubes. And I do. I know that I do. And when I have to get interrupted like every 30 minutes with an ad, I don't appreciate it a lot, right? I understand it's part of the deal and it's necessary to kind of fund the operation, but I try to avoid it here, right? So we generally will do one sponsor at the beginning and then have a nice, easy, in-depth conversation for the rest of the show. And that's not going to change. But there is another sponsor type that we do from time to time, and we have done in the past that I've never really talked about, but it's more of a brand awareness campaign. And so you'll see videos that come out on our channel from time to time that have kind of a big, long sponsor. We stick those at the end of certain posts. And they're really brand awareness. The way I think a good explanation of how this works is it's almost like if you went to a trade show and you walked up to a booth and you just spent 5 minutes with somebody and they just told you about their company, what they're doing, what they're working on, who their leadership team is, all that stuff. And so they're, brand awareness, they're much longer. They're like 5, sometimes 7 minutes, depending on the length of it. But they work better as just one bundled promo. And so from time to time, we'll do those and we'll add those to the back of some videos. And so my goal is to share something that's useful, right? Share a sponsor or a promo that's useful, but also not just make it a purely sponsored post that is totally obnoxious. So we put some good content at the beginning and then there's a promo at the end. And of course, if you don't like the promo, listen to 30 seconds of it, just exit out, go to the next video. But that's what's going on. And I just wanted to be transparent so there's nothing weird going on about that. A lot of people like the promos. Actually, some of those videos do better than many of our other videos, but we don't do a lot of them. They come through every now and then, but I just wanted to be transparent. And I think that way it's actually a little bit better than having a bunch of promos interwoven into the live stream. So you'll see some of those from time to time. And I don't think I've ever explained why we do that or what the strategy is, but that way they're at the end of the videos. They're not during the lives. And so if they pop up and you're just, oh, I don't care about this, or I do care about that, then you can just pop right out of the video and move on to the next topic. But that's what's going on. I just wanted to explain that. So there's nothing, nothing weird. I don't want you to feel like it's like a bait and switch or something, but then that way we don't have to take a bunch of sponsors in the middle of the live stream and kind of interrupt the flow. So that's what's going on. If you see those from time to time, that's all it is. And if you're not interested, no problem at all. Just bounce out to the next one. And then that way it's less interference, hopefully. So just wanted to explain that. We released one yesterday and we don't do a lot of them, but when they come through, it's like when there's fish in the water, right? You fish and there's some good companies, right? We don't take anything that I don't think is inappropriate. So that's what's going on. Just wanted to let you know. And this was a lot longer than I thought it was going to be, but wanted to explain that. All right. So now, little housekeeping stuff is going on. All right. So now we've got a great stream planned ahead and victories that are afoot. And so let's get right into it on the day. Major victory in the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals. Been waiting for this one because we've already had some other victories with Gouveia in California. But now we went up north a little bit to Portland, Oregon. And in Portland, Oregon, we had a lower level judge that said, Trump, you can't deploy the National Guard anywhere. Who do you think you are, the president? You want to bring people in here and clean up the streets and stop them from attacking ICE officials at federal buildings and other locations? Well, that is not appropriate here because it's a sanctuary city and we run our city. And if we want illegal alien criminal gangbangers flowing all over the place, we're free to do that. But now the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals has come down. And this, of course, was the state of Oregon, the city of Portland, and a bunch of blues suing Trump and Hegseth and the National Guard. And now we're going to see some uniformity on this. And the question, of course, is, oh, perfect. We're in the Ninth Circuit. This is over on the west coast of the United States. But what happens when this thing, it sort of bounces around and we're in Chicago and we're in all these other places that are also filing lawsuits on the same basis, saying Trump can't declare what's going on in our states? Well, now the Ninth Circuit has two decisions that are very persuasive, and there will be more coming. So the Supreme Court at some point may need to come in here and clean this up. But here is what the decision says. Now, per curiam from the judges, we're going to fast forward through a lot of this. The main takeaway, Trump's motion is granted. Nice to see that. And so the lower level judge said, get the National Guard out of here. Trump said, can you please stay that lower judge's decision? They said, yes, we can. Here's why. Now we're going to fast forward through this appellate jurisdiction stuff. They have jurisdiction. Otherwise they wouldn't be writing all this. And here is the juicy part. They give us a long list of background details. And remember how much lecturing we got about January 6th, day after day, about insurrection, democracy, whatever. It was 4 hours. They shot and killed a woman. Other cops died by suicide or natural causes after the fact with zero causation, I would argue. They would argue differently, to January 6th. There were people in the crowd, guys like Ray Epps, who were on the FBI's most wanted list until they weren't, and then got telephonic Zoom change of plea deals and so on. We got abused over January 6th. Now, compare and contrast that, and that was right in the aftermath of the Summer of Love, BLM Summer of Love. Remember, we had $2.7 million of damages, million with an M, over in the Capitol building, billion with a B for the Summer of Love and BLM, and we didn't get lectured at that at all. In fact, good Nancy Pelosi taking a knee in her little scarf. But now, here's more. Factual background and procedural history. Look at this list of insurrection all day, every day, day after day, month after month. They write from the court, you know, in the days and months leading up to the federalization that happened here, the order from the president, there's been a lot of events at ICE facilities. Now, while many of these events have been peaceful, others have been violent and even deadly. Really? People are dying? Wow. I wonder if they're going to give somebody a state funeral like they did for George Floyd or something like that and elevate this up to the no, they don't, because they say Trump is the one who is doing the attacking. But now ICE people are shooting their own people outside facilities in Texas. For example, on September 24th, there was a shooting at an ICE facility in Dallas. One detainee was killed and 2 others were seriously injured. On September 26th, 2 days later, over 200 protesters blocked access, 200 people blocked access to a gate at an ICE facility in Chicago. And these people are being lauded as heroes. And one of the protesters was apprehended with a gun in his possession. Now, since June this year, there have been regular protests at the Lindquist Federal Building, an ICE facility in Portland, which is at issue in this case. Some of these protests have been peaceful, but many have turned violent, and protesters have threatened federal law enforcement officers and the whole building. And you're going to see there's a bunch of these declarations, these DECL declarations. This one's from Wamsley. This one's from Dobson. And there's a bunch of people saying, yes, court. Yes, they're trying to kill us. Yes, they're trying to burn our building down. Yes, they've got battering rams and so on. This guy, Wamsley, said, yeah, protesters have targeted this site and the employees who work there since early June. It's like 4 months. They were upset about 4 hours. Based on its internal risk assessments, the Portland Police Bureau, the PPB, we're going to see a lot of them, they activated the crowd management commanders and their RRT, their rapid response teams. They did that on June 11th through the 25th, just as a precautionary measure. They had to activate their resources. That's indicative that maybe there's a conflict on their streets, right? Now, here, the Portland police, they made 25 arrests between June 11 and the 19th. So 25 people, even they acknowledged they had to round up. Court says there was another person, Wamsley, who said, as a result of the destruction that was caused by these protesters and threats to the building, we were forced to close the facility for more than 3 weeks. From June 13th to July 7th, had to close the whole building down, inoperable. You can't deport people in ICE facilities and utilize that facility if it's closed. This significantly impeded operations, said Wamsley. Now, while the facility is again currently operational, the windows on the buildings are boarded to prevent further damage to property or attempts at incursions and to provide security for the people inside. But when they went into Portland, the city said, sorry, you can't have wood coverings on the windows. You'd have to take the windows down so that our illegal alien violent protesters, so-called insurrectionists, so that they can come and kill you through the windows. You can't put boards on there. Who do you think you are? On June 8th, protesters placed wood, rocks, and a traffic barrier to impede the operations. On June 11th, they're just walking us through the days. On June 11th, a man set fire to various materials that the protesters compiled to a barricaded vehicle gate, and other protesters added to the pile of materials, increasing the flames, trying to smoke them out. They then placed a pole against the main lobby entrance. Then on June 19th, a serious incident occurred. A group of protesters, including one dude with a firearm, they went up the driveway of the ICE facility. They threw rocks and sticks at the guards and fired M80 fireworks at these officers. Protesters threw a mortar at the front entrance of the building, injuring an officer, and FPF officers had to extinguish 2 fires in the front of the building. This is such a weird thing because it's like, and I'm not advocating for any, actual competency from these people, but I mean, if you're going to attack officers and like free the people inside, what are you doing with rocks and sticks? Like, this is America, you know? And at some point, I'm wondering, are they going to escalate? Like, God forbid, I hope they do not. I hope they just get arrested and the National Guard comes in here and cleans this up. But what are they doing with rocks and sticks? Is it even serious? Like, what are they doing? Are they just trying to be a nuisance? Or are they trying to kill people? But this one, they threw a mortar. I mean, this stuff can kill people, right? An M80, injuring an officer at some point. Depends where it pops off, right? You never know. FPF officers had to extinguish 2 fires. Fires, smoke inhalation. You can't control a fire. So that could easily kill people. So it's almost like they are trying to kill people. Like they think they're armed combatants, but they're just so incompetent they don't have, it's like if you have 200 protesters and you all came in with firearms, there's not much an ICE facility can do about that unless the National Guard is there. So it's like a pseudo war with fireworks, and it's still obviously very violent, and they should be arrested and charged with assault and attempted murder for all of those things. But it's all, it's like rocks and sticks too. It's very strange. Officers were forced to barricade themselves inside the building, and protesters placed chains on the exterior doors so that when they burn the building down, they can't leave. That is like straight terrorism. We saw that out of places like Mumbai. Remember those mall attacks or those attacks in the theaters where they barricade the doors in and just walk around inside shooting everybody? Eventually, the protesters attempt to breach the front door and broke the front door's glass. Officers from Portland were then forced to deploy long guns, but they didn't use them. Protesters continued to throw mortars at the building. Now, the Border Patrol Tactical Unit, the BORTAC, they deployed an armored tactical vehicle to the building, and working with an ICE special response team, they eventually pushed protesters back to the street. 3 protesters were arrested and charged with assaulting a federal officer. That's it. 3 protesters barricading you in a building and then setting stuff on fire. How is that not attempted murder or terrorist attack? On June 24th, again, just walking through the calendar, protesters attempted to set a U.S. flag on fire in the driveway. Later, another protester attempted to light an incendiary device next to the guard shack. When officers approached the protester, she threatened them with knives. Protesters also poured a substance like motor oil on the vehicle entrance. On June 24th, one protester shot officers with a paintball gun. After a Portland officer warned protesters, another one is shining lasers in their eyes, which can blind you. The same night, another protester was arrested for assaulting an officer with a machete and a knife. All 3 protesters were charged with assault on a federal officer, and that's it, out of like hundreds or thousands. On June 29th, another individual tampered with the building access card reader, and he was arrested. He resisted arrest by biting and kicking the officers who took him into custody. 3 card readers were vandalized in June, replacements coming soon. While the card readers are inoperable, then employees are delayed. They can't do security. People coming in and out can't figure out who's who. And while they're delayed, the protesters are doxing the officers. They're out there snapping photos of people and their family members, many of them waving foreign flags around, because this is obviously an invasion and an attack against the responsive forces. We got invaded. We have a counter reaction. Our men and women in the federal government right now against these sanctuary states are the counter attack. The invasion was attack 1. Counter attack is deportation. So now they're counter attacking back. For months, ICE officers have been the targets of doxing. They go after their families because these people are nuts. On several occasions since June, protesters have followed officers who have been deployed in Portland back to their hotels, and groups have protested at the hotels. Several ICE officers at their offices had their names, photographs, home addresses publicly all shared, threatening messages across the board. Multiple Portland ICE officers have had unknown individuals appear at their residence, peering into their homes and recording officers coming and going. On July 4th, ICE officers observed several individuals defacing ICE with graffiti. When ICE attempted to apprehend them, one ran towards an officer and kicked him, causing him to fall. Another threw an incendiary device towards the officers, which detonated near the officers. He's like, do these people even know what they're doing? Like, it's attempted murder of cops, throwing incendiary devices at them. And the Portland cops are all just kind of like, well, I guess, it's a peaceful protest. The U.S. Attorney's Office charged 22 people, and those numbers are nothing, on June 13th and July 8th with offenses committed at the ICE facility. Tons of offenses, destructive devices, depredation of government property. In June, a man was also arrested for a laser pointer. Now, protesters regularly attempt to impede government vehicles constantly. When a vehicle stops, protesters surround it. They shout threats. One example, on August 9th, a group of protesters became aggressive when an ICE vehicle was leaving the facility, and they began beating the vehicle, striking it with their fists. A Portland officer had to use pepper balls to push the protesters away, and again in September, ICE officers reported vehicles following them after they left the ICE facility, following them home. On September 1, as the calendar continues, protesters assembled a guillotine. It's official. Some federal agents set up a guillotine on January 6th. They don't even know who did it, as far as I know. Maybe they know now. I don't think. Does anybody know? Let me know if you know. I don't think I know. And they said that was an insurrection. So I guess this is an insurrection. And that one only lasted 4 hours and was set up by the feds after the pipe bombs distracted all the cops. And Nancy Pelosi refused to do anything about it after Stephen Summer was like, Nancy. And 2 protesters wielded riot shields. This incident and others were also recorded in multiple emails. Even the Portland officers are reporting their activities. On September 1, the groups of protesters at the facility ranged from 40 to 200 people at different times of the day, just taking shifts. ICE agents did several push-outs, arrested a few. That night, ICE agents made and deployed gas to clear the front of the building and to move the vehicles. September 2nd was uneventful. 20 of the usuals were back. September 3rd, a person illegally flying a drone was also arrested, and he reacted violently. There were about 20 people there that day. Then, on 9/4, a Portland officer reported seeing several homeless people being coerced into approaching the ICE facility. Wow. They're just taking homeless people, and they're like, here, take this 5th of vodka and just, walk right up there. The instigators told these people they should create a distraction or just rattle the gate. Go up there, I'll buy you a 40. Go rattle that gate and beat those officers. Officers confirmed this was happening. They watched the instigators escorting different older homeless people up to the gate. That's not very communistic, is it? Well, I guess each according to their needs, they need these homeless people, so they just shove them up there. Not very compassionate. Portland police took custody of an elderly man after he asked if he could just come up to the gate and rattle it so that the Antifa instigators would leave him and others alone. They're threatening me. They want me to come up here and shake your gate. Otherwise, they're just going to harass me in my corner over here. He was escorted behind the gates and interviewed. He told agents that he and several other homeless people were being coerced to instigate agent response. Sick. Then, also on that day, Portland arrested a woman described as, quote, a daily chronic problem. Oh, gosh. We have a lot of those in America. Who is very aggressive and was believed to be armed with a Glock. She has made threats to ICE agents, and she has expended her 3 strikes at the facility. We give them 3 strikes. That's really nice. According to one officer, she's been arrested many times and can be very, very violent. Then on September 6th, there were 50 to 60 very active protesters at the gate. There was a lot of noise, flashing lights, swinging sticks. Portland was pushing out to allow vehicles to enter, and other police observed 50 people in the driveway. FPS had 26 officers on duty. They were outnumbered. On September 5, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, Portland officers again reported groups of protesters ranging from 7 to 30 people with low energy, just like Jeb Bush had. Some dressed in all black, one with a baton, but otherwise no issues, just out there standing around. On September 9, multiple individuals were observed on 4 occasions shining high-powered flashlights at vehicles leaving the building. Those like million candle watt. They got some burners out there, man. Million candle watt right through your windshield as you're an ICE agent driving out. Isn't that nice? Day after day, repeated. Different tactics. In second weeks of September, ICE received multiple reports that drivers leaving the ICE facility were temporarily blinded or disoriented after individuals shined high-powered lights at their vehicles. Again, on September 9th, screenshots were captured of threats on social media to murder the ICE officers. Someone posted, "Fed ain't nothing but a target practice. Fed ain't nothing but a target practice." Execute Gestapo on site, said another post. Off the pigs, said another post. This is their ideology. This is who they are. On September 12th, protesters also photographed an unmarked government vehicle as it was leaving and gave the location on social media. Fast forward, September 12th, 8 to 10 protesters, but a vehicle arrived and unloaded a large quantity of sticks and bats. And it was unknown if they were gearing up for Sunday night or to just resupply. And it's just like, it feels like half measures to me. And unfortunately, it's all it is sticks and bats. But so what do you, like, do you think you're just going to go beat officers? And like, that's not, I don't know, maybe they get away with it. Well, if you beat them 4 times, not 3 strikes of beating, it's no problem. But the 4th time, then they get mad and put your name on a list. Hughes said the same. Now, on September 13th, there were 40 to 50 people at the facility. Someone had a green laser. Then Portland increased the number of its officers. They had not determined why the bats and sticks were being delivered. Well, maybe, I don't know, it's baseball season? Are they going to play some cricket? On September 15th, 16th, and 17th, there were groups, 10 to 50 people. Some were very energetic, so Jeb Bush was not there. On September 18th, the afternoon started with 150 plus. Then later, 50 to 60 of the normal people. They screamed and threw objects at the Portland police. And notice this, a lot of this is about Portland, right? So it's like, you guys cannot solve this. Day after day, it's like, you guys have been doing this for months now. So Portland, like, obviously, we're going to need some National Guard in here. They screamed, and one officer said there does appear to be a large camp that was set up, even though they cleaned it out earlier in the day. Clear it out, come on, right on back. So Portland, you can't handle it. On September 19th, Homeland Security investigations, they got a tip that someone was going to detonate a bomb at the ICE facility. Now, although the threatened attack did not occur, preparing for that diverted important agency resources, just like they did on January 6th with the pipe bombers. Now, a Portland officer summarized the situation. He said, well, FPS agents were busy. What? We were busy. That night, there were 50 protesters, again, throwing objects, running at cars. There were black blockers. FPS also reported black blockers assaulting people. And they provided another video of a black blocker assaulting a journalist with a large sword or stick. What is a black blocker? I don't know. There was a disturbance outside the building that day, and they deployed munitions to break up the crowd. Then again, September 20th, another 50 people. They were more agitated that night. There was a disturbance involving protesters and counter-protesters. And then, again, one disturbance, a protester pepper sprayed someone else, one black blocker. What are those? Like a lineman? On September 25th and 26th, there were between 10 to 20 protesters, sometimes yelling at police, sometimes minimally active. On the 27th, another 50 to 60, most of them blocking things, dressed in block with helmets, masks, and other PPE. So FPS requested assistance from the PPB to get vehicles out. They had resources to clear the driveway, but they were shining bright lights at them. And again, Portland did not assist because the officers thought the request might conflict with their previous directions to not assist with the facilitating of the moving of vehicles in and out of the facility. Ah, interesting. So Portland police, if it's like helping move an illegal alien at all, in the building or out of the building, they don't, nope, sorry. That's not our jurisdiction. You deport your own illegals. PPB did not have the resources to accomplish this. They even admit it, right? So saying they could not handle a crowd of this size and demeanor. It's great. Court is saying perfect. Thanks for admitting that. Trump is saying thank you. Perfect. That's why we needed the National Guard, because you guys couldn't handle it. On September 28th, or you wouldn't handle it, couldn't or wouldn't. On the 28th, after the announcement of the federalization order, so that was a nice intro here from the court. Day after day, night after night, month after month, even the Portland police say we can't handle this or don't care to handle it or they're not approved to handle it. Then Trump says, all right, look, we're coming in. There were 30 to 200 protesters outside the ICE facility on September 28th after the announcement we're coming in. Portland attempted to de-escalate the conflict several times, made 2 arrests, but they did not provide traffic control resources, didn't want to help because of the confrontational nature of the individuals at the facility, right? They're too mean for us, so we're just going to let them do what they're doing. Wild. Cops. The static nature of the event, and there were a couple of confrontations, so we don't want to do anything. Then on September 29th, another FPS Portland officer had to deploy a pepper spray fogger against a protester who would not leave. Later, they warned protesters to clear the driveway, and a few minutes later, they again deployed pepper spray foggers at the people who were shining high-powered strobe lights in the officers' faces as they were attempting to push the crowd back from the driveway. One of the officers who had the strobe light directed at him experienced pain and disturbances in his vision. Now, normally, quote, Portland would be able to rely on the other division of Portland to assist with this. Okay, so like the special force, local force would be able to rely on them to come in. Now, FBS has been informed, though, that they're not going to come in. They'll only respond to life and safety situations, not anything immigration related, because they are a sanctuary city and they love illegals and they want to support the people who are out there attacking federal ICE officials. It's almost like I'm kind of having flashbacks to like Waco. Like, all right, so there's shining lights in there. Maybe these Antifa ICE protesters can come out with speakers and start playing rock music late at night. And the federal enforcement officials just have to sit there and take it because the local cops won't help with that. It's like they're under siege day after day after day. And the Portland cops are like, well, maybe you shouldn't be deporting illegal aliens who live here. But when FPS called the Portland cops multiple times on September 9th to get assistance with a woman who was being physically assaulted by 13 protesters, they would not even intervene or assist. Will only respond to personal life threats and danger. Oh, she's being attacked. Can you come help? No, thanks. Eventually, they brought her onto the federal property for her safety and then pushed the protesters back so the woman could escape without the protesters following her. In June, Portland Police Chief Bob Day spoke publicly about avoiding any action. Okay, the chief of police came out and he said, we're not going to do anything that shows perceived or actual support for immigration agents. Not going to do it. In emails summarizing these incidents, officers report that no officers are available to respond to disturbances. The police have just abandoned. They sent an email saying Portland, quote, has no officers to go or call. You need help? We're not coming. We're not responding to the disturbance. And we have few to zero officers available. We're not coming over there for a verbal disturbance. You're on your own. So the court now writes this. The lack of support from the Portland police has forced FPS to rely almost exclusively on ICE and another team for assistance in preventing violent protesters from attacking the officers at the facility. FPS deployed 115 from other regions, all working 24/7 to maintain order at the federal building. And they have thus far spent over $2 million on overtime pay and expenses just to maintain order in the wake of these protests. Over $2 million. What was the damage done on January 6th again? Yeah. And then they spent a lot more on that in the aftermath. I think billions, because they stood the entire agency up to go after 1,500 people. Ridiculous. But in September, ICE detailed 3 SRT certified special agents in Portland. And if we have to be here, then we can't be elsewhere, right? And that's another tactical strategy too. If you have to keep your enemy, at bay, just distract them over here. Make them spend all their resources on this region, and then that sucks up the resources from other regions that have more likelihood of being compliant with the deportations. So then, as we know, Trump came out on September 26th. After more than 3 months of disturbances, Trump said, enough. Homeland sent a memo to the DOD, now the DOW, requesting immediate sustained assistance. We need the National Guard. There are coordinated assaults by violent groups that are designated domestic terror organizations that are trying to smoke us out of the building and kill us and blind us. On September 27th, Trump then said, all right, Pete, let's go. Department of War contacted Oregon And they said, well, we're going to send them in there. But the governor of Oregon said, no, you're not. What do you think you are, the president? If we want illegal aliens to interfere with your deportations in federal law, we're allowed to do that. Come in and stop us. Well, here we are. Then Hegseth, after the rejection, issued a mobilization order. He said 200 members of the Oregon National Guard are coming in here for 60 days, taking his authority from the president. And of course, they did not like that. So then the state of Oregon and the city of Portland, they all sued. They said, you can't do this to us. They applied for a temporary restraining order, which the lower level judge granted. Now reversed. But she granted that back on October 4th. Now, the temporary restraining order stops Pete Hegseth and Trump from implementing the National Guard. You can't send them out here. The judge said, well, it's outside the law. You don't have the permission to declare something bad happening here and deploy the National Guard. It's ultra virus. It's outside the scope of the law, and it violates the 10th Amendment. And we have rights as states that are reserved to us to do our own law enforcement, and you can't come in here, Mr. President. Now, later that day, Oregon sought a second TRO, and after they entered its initial order, Trump and Hegseth sent in 100 federalized members of the California National Guard. And we remember this, they're kind of moving people around from different locations. Said, okay, well, if we can't activate the Portland National Guard, we already won in California. Newsom already tried all this. He lost. Obviously, it's federal buildings, federal property. We've got all sorts of statutes that allow this to happen. And the president is the commander in chief. We have the supremacy clause. And the list goes on and on. But we've already beat Newsom. So they said, oh, okay, we'll just take the California Guard and just run them up here to Portland. Then another order came down and said, you can't do that either. Which is why this is also good, because now we've got two states under the Ninth Circuit that have similar holdings. Now they say, all right, so they sued and they acknowledge that prior case. Now, before we get into it, they write, the Ninth Circuit, we note here that our analysis is also circumscribed by our legal conclusions in the Gouveia case. Precedent. We already decided in that one, so now we have to follow that. And you know what's also so sick about this is the lower level judge who issued the TRO knows that the Ninth Circuit also decided this. So why is she acting out of alignment with the Gavin Newsom holding? Because they're partisan hacks. First, in Newsom, where we already held this, the Ninth Circuit says, we already held that neither the political question doctrine nor the text precludes judicial review. Okay, so they hold the power, and the courts will always do this. One argument is that they can't argue with the president. If Trump says it's National Guard time, he's made the decision to do that. They cannot review it. There is no judicial review. Courts very rarely give that up. It's like their only power. So they said, well, we can hear it. And so we are going to hear this case. And that's what we're doing. And we had oral arguments on this too. And at the oral arguments, Trump's attorneys, they noted that they're going to challenge these conclusions on the merits of the Newsom case, right? So they're like, I don't even know what we're doing here. Because Newsom already said that we're going to win this, Oregon. But they agreed that we could view these holdings as binding and argued that we would win. Now, second, we also addressed this Ninth Circuit, whether we owe the president's determination any deference, right? There's some things you say it's the president's decision to make. A judge can't substitute their judgments for the president's judgment, because if they do, then they're the president. And they're not. In answering that question, we considered Congress's delegation of power to the president and the militia and all these things. And we held in the Newsom case that the review of the president's determination, if the president says, I got to deploy the National Guard, the president is in the best position to do that. They're in the pilot seat. They can see all of the knobs. They can see all of the data. All of the information they need is at their disposal, so they can decide, because they're, running the government. But the courts are not. So if there is going to be judicial review, it better be especially deferential. We must give a level of deference to the president, and the president's determination is very strong. But we also rejected the idea that Trump could just do this based on no evidence whatsoever. If something is obviously absurd or if it's made in bad faith, then we can't allow the president to do that. But if there's evidence, then we can't. Good. In sum, we concluded in the Newsom case that courts may review the president's determination just to make sure it's within the range of an honest judgment. But they also rejected the other arguments, saying you can't interfere with the president's ability to execute the laws. We held that while minimal interference with the execution of the law is not enough to invoke the deployment of the National Guard, it doesn't require that the president be completely precluded from executing the laws at all, or that it's inappropriate. So applying all of these, we turn to the factors and we show that President Trump is going to win and the National Guard can be deployed. So here's some more background. Now, the president's authority to federalize the Guard is statutory. It's in congressional law. It's not constitutional. The Constitution vests the power to call for a militia to the legislative branch. Article 1, Section 8, Clause 15, a bunch of powers of Congress listed in there. Now, Congress is very bad at doing a lot of those things, so they delegate execution over to the executive. Under that enumeration, Congress has enacted several statutes which delegate all of that power to the president, authorizing the president to federalize the National Guard in 3 circumstances. If there's an invasion, which there is right now, but they're not relying on that one. If there's a rebellion or danger of a rebellion, or if the president is unable with regular forces to execute the laws of the United States, the president can deploy the Guard. Now, Trump says that the circumstances at ICE establish that, well, 2 sections. First, this was a rebellion. This is a danger of a rebellion. They're attacking our federal facilities, and it authorizes the federalization of the Guard. We cannot, with regular forces, execute the laws, and so we need some help. And the court says, well, because we determine, as we did in the Gouveia case, that this law allows us to conclude that they're going to win, we don't need to do the same and analyze this other one because they're going to win on that one. So we don't need to analyze everything. This is good enough. Now, whether they are going to win it depends upon whether the basis for deploying the forces meet the statutory requirements. Now, while the district court cited a highly deferential standard, saying as long in the Newsom case, so the judge, they're saying, took the Newsom case, and she says, I need to ask whether Trump's deployment to Portland reflects a colorable assessment of the facts and law within a range of honest judgment. Okay. So I don't know. The judge could say what exactly is going on in Portland, but the president seems like it's close. Like there's something going on. The president's making the judgment that we need help. So that's good enough for me. It's honest. It's within the bounds. I might not agree with it. I might strongly agree with it, but that's the standard. Is it within a range of honest judgment, or is it just like arbitrary and Trump just wants to go attack some politician or something like that? And you have strong evidence of that. So, okay, so that's the standard. So she took that standard up at the lower court and then misapplied it. She took it and then erred by failing to actually apply it so she could just find the outcome that she wanted. Instead, the lower level judge, she substituted her own assessment of the facts for the president's assessment of the facts. She says, I'm the president now. Eat it, Trump. Can't do that. This, writes the Ninth Circuit, is the opposite of the significantly deferential standard that applies to the president's decision. You can't substitute yourself for him. First, the lower level judge erred by determining that Trump's colorable assessment of the facts is limited by undefined temporal restrictions and by her own evaluation of the level of violence necessary to impact the execution of the law. She's like, well, they're peaceful protests, so it's not enough. Trump says it's violent. I say it's peaceful. I'm stronger than Trump, so I win. Thus, she determined that it would apply Newsom's colorable basis standard as they existed, quote, at the time, like at the time. So she just cuts off the days before his announcement and the days after. And she says, well, on that one day, things were very peaceful. Everything was perfect. The court then discounted the violent and disruptive events. So she just ignored June, July, August, and the resulting closure of the facility for 3 weeks. And she focused only on a few events in September. She's like, no. They weren't there at Tuesday morning at 9 a.m. All right, so things were fine. Well, that's because they were still hungover from the night before. Thus, the district court discounted most of the evidence all the way from June through September. Just wrote it all off. These judges are such scammers, man. The district court did not even define what period would be encompassed at the time. She's like, well, at the time. Instead, it cited Newsom. And she said that we were considering facts leading up to, and it could be days, it could be week. It's unclear whatever she considered, but it's wrong. She also made a mistake in characterizing the events in September. There were numerous instances of violence. So she cut off a bunch of months, but the month that she did include, September, she downplayed it. There were numerous instances of violent and disruptive behavior that she forgot about. On September 1, 200 protesters were disrupting operations at ICE. It's in the declaration. Same thing. Agents conducted several pushouts. They deployed gas. On September 6, 50 to 60 very active. It required them pushing them out in order to get their vehicles inside. On September 12th, large quantities of sticks and bats, not for a baseball game. On September 19th, there was a threat of a bomb. And another night, 50 protesters outside the facility, the black blockers, were assaulting people. She forgot all of it. Didn't want to read it and just issued an order accordingly. Now, Section 12406, it contains no such limitations. You don't get to say that the president has to meet a certain standard in order to reach a level of violence that is acceptable to you. By its plain text, the law requires only a determination that the president is unable to execute the laws with regular forces. That's it. It delegates that decision to the president, and it does not limit the facts and circumstances that the president may consider in doing so. In fact, the inherently subjective nature of this evaluation, meaning the president has to make a judgment call, has to decide. And based on what I'm seeing right now, this is what I would do. It demonstrates the president has the authority to weigh the factors. The president can and should consider the totality of the circumstances in making this decision. But rather than reviewing President Trump's determination with great deference, the lower level judge substituted its own determination of the relevant facts and circumstances because they think they are the president. This approach is error under Newsom, and she's bound by that case, and she's totally botched it. Our dissenting colleague takes a similar approach. Now, the dissent says that the law confines the president to the present circumstances because the statute lacks any forward-looking language. It's like, well, it's only like right now and back. You can't look into the future and prognosticate what's coming next. And so therefore, the president can't think about the future when issuing the deployment of the National Guard. It's just idiotic. That observation, however, does not resolve whether the president may also consider past event. In fact, all three statutory prongs are the same: prior, past, or present. And the president is entitled, in fact, duty-bound, to evaluate the entire context. What's been happening? What's happening now? What do I think is going to happen in the future? No. You can only consider what's happening in this 3 to 5 day window. Considering the totality, there is a colorable basis for the president to make the decision that he did. But the lower level judge also erred. She placed way too much weight on the statements that Trump made on social media. They get so mad. Trump posts on the internet. This one's actually coming to his favor now. The other lower judge got baited into it. She's like, well, he said this, and he said this, and he said this. The court interpreted Trump characterizing Portland as war-ravaged as the equivalent of the president ignoring the facts on the ground. She's like, I live in Portland. It's not war-ravaged at all. Now, as such, she then used that one statement. She says, well, if he's wrong about it being war-ravaged, then everything else that he considered is also wrong. And she said it's not a war zone. And so she picked out one statement that she could disprove and falsify. It's not a war zone. There's no tanks driving around here. They got bats and sticks and laser pointers. And because Trump said that, everything else must be bad, and so she can overrule him. As such, she relied on these statements to disregard the other facts that they just listed out for us in great detail. And again, this was error for two reasons. For one, under Newsom, which we already decided, we consider whether the facts provide a colorable basis. Do any facts that they allege support their view? Even if the president may exaggerate the problem, this does not change the other facts that do provide a colorable basis to support his power. Now, for another reason, the social media post characterizing Portland as war-ravaged may actually be reasonably viewed as part of his assessment under rebellion. And they're not even going to reach that. They don't need to. Now, moreover, this law cannot be analyzed solely based on external protest and violence. We also have to consider the executive Trump's internal assessment of its ability to enforce the laws. And you don't have any eyes into that, Judge. The record reflects that 115 FPS officers were diverted to Portland. These are FPF officers nationwide. Were all diverted back to Portland. The president may reasonably rely on this evidence. The dissent only reaches a different conclusion by talking about staffing difficulties, but Trump bears the burden, and it's been met. It's a colorable assessment, and you can't substitute that out. So this is error under Newsom. And third, the district court made a mistake and erred by concluding that the surge deployment established that regular forces were able to execute the laws. So this conclusion, if you're a judge, can only be reached by overlooking the record. I mean, this is pretty scolding type language. The judge, you're just ignoring the facts. We know that. It's nice to see the Court of Appeals saying that too. While the record establishes that they deployed many officers to Portland, nearly 25% of the agency's capacity for 12-hour shifts, 7 days a week, these deployments were irregular. They're unsustainable. We got sworn declarations from a bunch of people too. The judge just ignored. Robert Cantu. He's the director of Federal Protective Services. Okay, so that's FPS. So FPS is a federal agency, not a local agency. My mistake on that. And Camilla, so is a small federal agent pulled from everywhere, calling Portland for help. Portland doesn't show up to help. And there were other smaller sub-Portland subunits that existed too. The DHS field office director who oversees and directs ICE also said the following. While the surge and its inspectors help, it's not enough. The efforts to contain the violence have placed an unreasonable strain on us. If we have to continue to handle this, then we're going to have to pull them from all over the country in that one declaration that the lower level judge just ignored. So disregarding this uncontested evidence, she rejected Trump's argument. She says there's no basis for these deployments, but she turned the proper analysis on its head. The lower judge, by interpreting the modest improvements created by the surge, she said, well, things are getting better. So therefore, there's no basis for this. She completely discounted that the surge was inherently irregular. That's why we needed a surge. We have to bring them in because there's a problem. The fact that you're acknowledging that there was a surge and saying that it solved everything is actually indicative of the problem, Judge. The district court accorded no deference to Trump and took over. And so thus, considering the totality of the circumstances, the Ninth Circuit writes, and applying the highly deferential standard of review, we conclude that President Trump's assessment of the situation in Portland, specifically the threat to federal personnel and property, reflects good judgment, a colorable assessment of the facts within the range of honest judgment. Blown out, lower judge. Thus, they're going to win. And your other claims are terrible. You're trying to argue that the 10th Amendment prevents the National Guard. They say, here, we've already concluded. They've already met the statutory definition. So the statute says that they can do this, so it's not a 10th Amendment violation. And apart from the likelihood of success on the other matters, they ask, are you going to be irreparably injured absent a stay? And here in Newsom, in the prior case, they've already solved this. We concluded that both irreparable harm and public interest weigh in favor of Trump and America. They have an uncontested interest in protecting federal agents and property and the faithful execution of the law, yes, even against illegal alien invaders. Here, just like Newsom, the undisputed facts show protesters damaged a federal building, made it close down for 3 weeks, tried to burn the building down, placed chains on its doors, attempted to breach the front door of the building, broke the front glass door, threw objects at the building, including rocks, sticks, and a mortar, launched M80 fireworks at federal officers, assaulted federal officers, laser beams, and doxing. Now, the government's interest in preventing this is significant. We have to safeguard the normal functioning of our government, and it is legitimate to do that. But the dissent, they say, well, Trump doesn't face any harm because the second TRO, which is not before us, still prevents him from deploying the National Guard. But this argument lacks merit. The district court stated that it granted the second TRO based on the same legal reasoning in the first TRO. So we're invalidating the first TRO as well. So Trump is correct that the first TRO and the second TRO, they rise or fall together on the merits, and the second one's going to get nuked too. While whether the second TRO could be extended to preclude the National Guard is a separate issue from California. But this provides no basis to say that the president is not harmed. America is not harmed when these maniacs are attacking our agents. So again, the state of Oregon and Portland, they argue, well, the other factors weigh in our favor. They say, okay, so what if they have interest in their buildings? They're not going to be irreparably harmed. But they are. They say the record is showing this is completely unsustainable. In Portland, you're not willing to help the government. So they win. Now, finally, the state also argues that they are going to have sovereign injury if the illegals come out. No, we're going to have sovereign victory when the illegals are gone. As we stated in Newsom, while they do have interest in their states, it's already been delegated. Okay, it's in the Constitution. Constitution says call forth the militia. They delegated that over to the president, and Trump's going to win. Because we have concluded that Trump is likely to succeed on the merits by successfully invoking the law, your arguments, Oregon, Portland, and the rest of the new Cs and the blue states, your arguments fail. And so for those reasons, we, the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals, hereby grants Trump's motion for a stay pending appeal. We've got a concurring decision and a dissenting decision, but a very nice victory for President Trump, and just a beautiful, beautiful decision there, because it just scolded the lower level judge who was completely erroneous in her decision. So the National Guard will be deployed. Now we're going to start to see the circuits split on this. So 7th Circuit and other circuits, Chicago and other locations will continue to fight on this. But we've got the 9th Circuit now, 2 for 2. California, Oregon, stop enabling your sanctuary policies and supporting your protesters who are attacking federal law enforcement officers, just keeping your hands clean of it, because it really is your constituency. Join Team America, help the federal agents protect themselves, and we won't have to deploy the National Guard. But if you are too beholden to your illegal alien invader constituency, the National Guard will be deployed, as is constitutionally permissible, as seen here by the 9th Circuit. So we're going to keep our eye on this one and more, my friends. Thank you for subscribing and joining as we do. I think this will probably ultimately go up to the Supreme Court, but as it stands right now, big victory for President Trump and America. All right. Now, we're not done yet, but let us go over to the Comey case, because Comey is also getting into it. James Comey and his lawyers now scrambling after Lindsay Halligan is saying, we may need to implement a filter protocol for Patrick Fitzgerald, who is an attorney for James Comey in his prosecution. You see, this one's coming out of the Eastern District of Virginia, and the prosecutor who's bringing this one, as we know, is Lindsay Halligan. Signing this one is Tyler Lemons for the DOJ, saying we've identified some pretty big problems here, and Comey's defense team is also unloading. They're filing a bunch of motions, trying to keep this case from progressing. But here is what Halligan submitted into the Eastern District of Virginia. She says, all right, listen, we are now here asking for an expedited ruling on a request to implement a filter protocol. The evidence for this review could contain exculpatory or inculpatory evidence, and it could show that we have a big potential conflict and even disqualification problem for James Comey's main lawyer called Patrick Fitzgerald. Here's more. Both the Sixth Amendment and the Virginia Rules of Professional Conduct compel prosecutors to alert the court about a potential or actual conflict. Let's see if they give us some more details. Here's the background. We know James Comey was indicted for lying to Congress, false statements, and obstruction of justice, 2 counts. And evidence that the government has in their custody includes potentially protected material because the evidence was obtained from an attorney. And remember, in the Office of Inspector General report from, I think, 2019, there was clear evidence that Comey was sending his little memos, just like John Bolton was writing his little, diary memos. Comey was doing the same thing and sent them to his lawyers back in 2017. One of those lawyers, Patrick Fitzgerald, same dude he just hired to represent him in this criminal defense case. Now, relevant to this motion, the attorney has informed the government that the quarantined evidence contains communications between Comey and several attorneys. And so the current lead defense counsel appears to be a party of some of those communications. So DOJ saying we've got a bunch of evidence that helps our case to show that Comey's a liar, that he was leaking these materials out to everybody. When he was asked about it, he lied to Congress. And some of those emails were sent to his attorney. But as we've already talked about, remember when Trump was being prosecuted, they shattered his attorney-client privilege. We had Judge Beryl Howell in the D.C. district explain that there was a crime fraud exception and there was evidence that Trump and his lawyers were colluding to commit a crime together. And if you're furthering a crime and not getting defense work on a current case, for example, then maybe you're a co-conspirator and maybe you're going to be prosecuted. So how can you be representing him and then also say, I have attorney-client privilege? So the government is now here saying, we have a request. We want a filter protocol to reduce and segregate any potentially protected material. We're going to implement this. It's necessary so that the current trial milestones are maintained and met. We've got a strict schedule here. So we need to start processing all this evidence right now to separate it out to say, okay, this is privilege, this is not. So help us. Here, the potentially protected material could contain exculpatory or inculpatory evidence relevant to the defense or the government. And currently, the government is not aware of the contents of this protected material. We're not looking at it because it might be attorney-client privilege, so we can't see it. We need a team to come filter it out so we can look at it. As a party to some of the communications contained in the potentially protected material, the defense necessarily has awareness. They know about this. Now, additionally, based on other publicly disclosed information, here you go, the defendant used current lead defense counsel to improperly disclose that classified info. The DOJ had an Office of Inspector report. We've looked at it here. The final description of Comey's conduct is worth consideration. So here's what the Office of the Inspector General said. And I believe this was the 2019 report there from August. See that right there. Saying in the report, and we read actually some of the details, but the report itself said, the responsibility to protect sensitive law enforcement information falls in large part to the employees of the FBI. They have access to the data through their daily duties. Now, on occasion, some of these employees may disagree with decisions by prosecutors, judges, or high-ranking FBI and department officials about the actions to take in criminal or in counterintelligence matters. Some disagreement. They may even, in some situations, distrust the legitimacy of those supervisors or those decisions. So you've got some natural disagreement in the agency, okay? But even when these employees believe that their most strongly held personal convictions might be served by unauthorized disclosure, the FBI depends on them not to disclose the information. Like, you might disagree with our decision, but you can't just go complain about it to the public. FBI Director Comey failed to live up to this responsibility. by not safeguarding sensitive information obtained during the course of his employment and by using it to create public pressure for official action, Comey set a dangerous example for over 35,000, way too much, FBI employees and the many thousands more former FBI employees who have access to this non-public information. So they say, even the OIG is showing you. Comey's bad news. He leaks this stuff all over the place, and it's unbecoming of an FBI director. So this fact raises a serious question of conflict and disqualification for Patrick Fitzgerald. Some of the communications in the potentially protected material are from the same time as the focus of that OIG report. Now, before litigating any issue of conflict or disqualifying Patrick, the party should have access to all relevant and non-privileged information. The sooner that information is reviewed and filtered, the sooner the parties can make appropriate filings with you. And so, we request an expedited ruling. We want a filter protocol. We have a bunch of evidence we got to filter through, privileged or not. An expedited ruling is necessary so that we all have equal access to the information as quickly as possible. This will allow the parties and the court to discuss the relevant issues. And so please let us know. We want to get this done quickly. Signed out of Lindsay Halligan's office. Shout out to N. Tyler Lemons, Assistant U.S. Attorney over there in the Eastern District of Virginia. Now, the judge got a response in from Comey's people, and we've got two submissions in response to that. And let's take a look at what this one was from Comey's people. Yes. So now Comey is responding to Lindsay Halligan and the request for a filter team with an expedited ruling being decided by the court. They say, well, all right, we're here, Judge. And they didn't tell us that they were even going to file this. No prior notice that they were even going to drop this today. It's like, well, we were talking about this last week. You knew it was coming, so don't act surprised. The defense needs the 2 weeks afforded by the rules to review the materials and respond to this. This is important because based on our review, it appears that the government's review of the materials is unlawful. Oh, you've got attorney-client privilege. They don't really want a filter team because they want to say the government has a bunch of evidence that they should not have, that's illegal, that they've already looked at, and that's fruit of the poisonous tree, and that deserves sanctions, and a good sanction is a dismissal of the case. Right? It's like, no, they have materials. Finally, the government, and their effort to defame Patrick Fitzgerald, trying to defame him, he says, provides no basis to grant the motion, so you should deny it. He says, you have to give us time. We need 2 weeks. There's local rules. When the government first raised this with the defense on October 10th and 11th, oh, so you did know about it. The defense asked for an opportunity to review the warrants. The government would not give us the warrants before filing the motion for a filter protocol and did not produce warrants until October 13th. Now, the government acknowledges that the warrants were obtained in a previous investigation, quote from an attorney, bunch of redactions. What the government does not say was that the warrants at issue were obtained by prosecutors. This person, something, 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 something. Now, what is more, the warrant seized something, something. Comey did not participate in those materials. And the government, again, is refusing to answer our questions about this or that. Also, not answering questions about prior warrants. We've got concerns about review because defense has reason to believe something, 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 whatever that is. So we want to avoid delay. We want to seek sufficient time. And this is defamatory, he says. The government's assertion that he used the lead defense counsel to improperly disclose classified info, they say that's a criminal activity. That's provably false. And in any event, provides no basis to grant the motion to expedite. Well, we'll see. The OIG report even says that. Notably, there was no leaking of classified information. No, but you got emails. Did you get messages or not? Oh, gosh. He says full stop, just like Ketanji Brown. There was no leaking of classified information. And they do this all the time. They ask, like, that. The Feds say this. how do you respond to the accusations that you were leaking? Well, first of all, there was no leaking. Oh, what was it? It was an email. Oh, were you supposed to send that? Not really. Okay, so you leaked it. No, I sent an email. Okay, we got it. Labels are very important to them. There was no leaking by either Comey or his counsel. Full stop. The report found no evidence that Comey or his attorneys released any of the classified information to the media. They're saying the report even says that. But what happened was they passed it along to other people, is the allegation, to Daniel Richman, the Columbia law professor. It's like, so I didn't do it and he didn't do it. No, it's the guy that Comey hired. How come you didn't say that Richman didn't send it? And did you send any emails to Richman or vice versa? Was there conversations throughout that little cabal of people? Now, moreover, the OIG specifically addressed Comey and sharing this. And after Comey was fired, he sought legal advice. Well, so did Trump, and they breached his attorney-client privilege too, remember? Comey had written several memoranda. He had judged the 3 memoranda to be unclassified, and he shared those 4 unclassified memos with his defense counsel, who shared those memos with other attorneys. Yes, exactly. Thank you for admitting that. The memos were unclassified at the time that they were shared, and we shared unclassified. Comey did not share the classified memos with counsel. And yeah, that's interesting because I think there's disagreements about that. We'll find out once the filter team comes in. But thereafter, some weeks after this, there was someone in the government up-classified one of the memos to confidential. An up-classification doesn't change the fact that it was unclassified when he shared it. And that was a judgment call, and he's allowed to make that. In short, there's no good faith basis to saying that we're criminals, and I'm not getting disqualified at all. And so we need more time to respond to this, signed by Jessica Carmichael. Patrick Fitzgerald didn't write that one. Jessica Carmichael did, over for the Comey team. Now, we also see Comey is dropping a list of filings, and we'll go through all of this. The DOJ, of course, will respond to all of these, and we'll go through their responses, but they've got 2 of them here. Motion to dismiss the indictment based on selective and vindictive prosecution with 4 exhibits. Big fat filing over here. Let's take a look at it. 51 pages. Comey saying he needs to dismiss this because selective and vindictive prosecution, First Amendment, due process clause, equal protection principles, and more. So you have to dismiss the case with prejudice in a big fat 51-page motion that just got dropped today with a bunch of exhibits. And part 2 is the unlawful appointment filing, moving to disqualify Lindsay Halligan, another 34-pager, just dropped fresh by Comey's defense team. And we'll have the usual back and forth with these motions. So it's motion sandwich time. So we'll have Comey's motion, the DOJ's response, Comey's reply. And so we'll keep our eye on all of those developments. But his team is coming out swinging on this. And the judge just issued the latest order saying the arraignment on October 8th, we have a jury trial scheduled for January 5th, I believe. The court ordered some other deadlines. The government filed its motion for a filter team. And 6 days later, the government filed another motion. They want an expedited ruling on the filter team. The government said, we don't want the trial stones to be moved around. Then Comey responded to that. We don't want a filter team, or I need 2 weeks to respond to this. And having considered everything, we're going to deny Halligan's motion to expedite. But we're still going to handle the filter team request, but just not as quickly as the DOJ wants. The court finds this time frame balances the timing, so expediency to the government and necessary time for the defense. It's a complex trial, and there are some serious issues identified. And so therefore, we're not going to have this settled quickly, but Comey shall respond to the filter protocol claims by October 27th, signed by Michael Nachmanoff. So that's the judge. So lots of activity on this. And of course, we're going to keep our eye on this one. We've got a lot of stuff happening quickly on it. The president was out over the weekend talking about the scam led by Comey and Obama. And here's what the president had to say about this.
All of these indictments caused Obama the other day on a podcast to say that right now democracy is being threatened.
Yeah, I know. He says that all the time. He's the one that threatened it by spying on my campaign. He started it. Obama spied on my campaign, and he did it knowing it was illegal. He knew it was illegal, but he started the whole thing, and there were a lot of dishonest people, and I suspect they'll be caught.
All of these
I sure hope so, Mr. President. The dominoes slowly getting knocked down. We've got Tish, Comey, Bolton, and others, and the battles are just warming up. So we'll keep our eye on these. And of course, a lot of these motions are very reminiscent of the Trump filings that we saw, because Trump filed many motions to dismiss. They denied those. But Trump's motion to disqualify Jack Smith was successful in Florida. So we'll see what they say in response to that. We'll keep our eye on this one. But Comey and his attorneys now scrambling a bit to see what they can do to deny any weirdness between Patrick Fitzgerald, who was Comey's lawyer ages ago, who is spreading these messages around, now getting caught up in it and having to defend his honor and stay on this case. We'll see what the judge does. They breached Trump's attorney-client privilege and enabled them to use that evidence against him. We'll see if that same thing happens in Comey's case, or if he gets special privileges because he's not President Trump. We'll keep our eye on this one, my friends, and have all the updates on the Comey prosecution. Thank you for subscribing and joining as we do. All right, now we got one final segment on the day, and then we'll hear from you and see what you say about all of this. Coming up, President Trump exonerated. Remember this prosecutor, Alexander Acosta, the guy who gave Jeffrey Epstein that extremely sweetheart plea deal ages before he was re-prosecuted again and ultimately died? Well, Oversight Committee got their hands on some additional records, and this one includes a transcript from Alexander Acosta, R. Alexander Acosta. They sat down with him for a deposition on September 19, 2025 in Washington, D.C. Same prosecutor who many people had a lot of questions about, because he also then went to work for Trump over at the Department of Labor for like a short period of time and then was booted out of there. So then resigned. So Congress brought him in for questioning, and they asked him about what he knows about President Trump. This was way before Trump was even thinking about running for president. And the Oversight Committee now giving us some details, saying the Acosta transcript just destroyed the Democrats' Epstein-Trump smear, which was a hoax from the beginning, trying to say that Trump had some complicity or some evidence in the files, which we've never seen any evidence for. And if they had it, you expect it would have been dropped a long time ago. But Ranking Member Garcia and the Oversight Democrats have spent months pushing a lie against Trump. Here are the receipts that they don't want you to see. Writing, Acosta, the prosecutor who handled the original Epstein case, never talked to Trump about Epstein. Never. Not in person, not on the phone, not over email. Straight from his testimony. Did you ever speak to Trump generally? No, I did not. Okay, so you never, the entire time you were a U.S. attorney, you never once spoke to Donald Trump? The entire time? Let me be more clear. I did not speak with President Trump, with Donald Trump, before I was considered for Secretary of Labor. Didn't even talk to him. Okay, thank you. I was going to ask you that too. Had you met him before? Well, there was one instance where I saw him in the lobby across the way, and I remember thinking, oh, that's Donald Trump. If you define that as a meeting, we didn't have a conversation. I just saw him kind of like I'm seeing people in this room, just like he's over there. Okay, so you never had a phone conversation. Also, not just a meeting. You never had a phone of any conversation with Donald Trump before, which is also kind of crazy. It's like Trump didn't talk to that dude before he went over to the DOL. Secretary of Labor, didn't even talk to him. Anyways, that was first term. I did not have an in-person conversation. I did not have a phone conversation. Any email? We hadn't shaken hands. What about any of his associates? Email, text, any of that? No, to my recollection, no text to my recollection, no associates, my recollection. He moved in circles that I did not move in, to be honest. Okay, Mr. Fraud, can I ask you real quick? Now, how about Trump's name? Alexander Acosta, a couple excerpts here. They say, can I ask a follow-up question, sort of a sideline, and then go back to you? Did you have a discussion with anyone in the Trump administration about political concerns for Epstein? He says, again, I did not. You know, it may have come up during the vetting. It came up after I was publicly announced, I believe while I was probably doing Hill visits. I think it was during Hill visits because it was while I was in Washington. And I had a conversation with the communication staff about it. Okay, follow-up question. Over the course of your engagement at the DOJ, did you ever see any documents in which Donald Trump's name appeared with regards to the Epstein case? Not to my recollection. Were you aware that Donald Trump was friends with Jeffrey Epstein? I have no recollection of Donald Trump's associated with this investigation in any way, shape, or form. Oh, no, I'm just asking if they were friends. It's a well-known fact. It's okay. You can answer in the affirmative on things that are well. He says, well, of course I can answer in the affirmative. If it's an affirmative answers, then I'll answer affirmative. It's 20 years later. It's a well-known what? It's a well-known fact. He said, well, I did not direct the investigation, okay? If our prosecutors thought that they should pursue that lead, they were free to pursue that lead. If a prosecutor thought, she says, but is it possible that they did based on their relationship? She's digging, like anything at all, wants him to say anything. I have no knowledge that any person spoke to Donald Trump with respect to Epstein. I have no knowledge of Donald Trump's name appearing in any Epstein document. I have no knowledge of Donald Trump being associated with Epstein investigation in any way. I am not saying that it wasn't because I can't speak on behalf of the many, many attorneys and the case agent involved. I can simply say that I have no knowledge of that. And let me also say, I think if there was, I think it's pretty spectacular it hasn't leaked by now, but that's just speculation. Yeah, it is pretty spectacular that it hasn't leaked by now because it doesn't exist. Here's another one. Yeah, very different topic. I'm curious about your resignation from the first Trump administration. Okay, first of all, were you offered a position in the Trump administration as it pertains to or because of your role in the Epstein prosecution? Not in the least bit, no. Okay, and why did you resign from your position in the administration? Well, the resignation was my choice. I resigned from the position. And let me just say, I was not asked to resign. It was not suggested by anyone at the White House that I resign. I resigned, I think I said earlier, I'm old school. I think that if you're come to do these jobs, you serve and you leave, and they're special and they're a privilege. And if you become a distraction, then it's not appropriate for you to serve in these jobs. So I made the decision. I called the White House shortly after breakfast, asked to speak to the president. I told him that I thought it was time for me to move on. I said I did not want to be a distraction to his administration, and I chose to resign. We stepped out onto the South Lawn. He did an impromptu press conference right there. That's why I resigned. That's what I wrote, and I actually mean what I write usually. So yes. And I think we touched on this a little bit earlier, but just to emphasize, had you ever discussed the Epstein investigation or Jeffrey Epstein with Donald Trump prior to your confirmation? No, I had not. Okay. No, I had not. So it continues. We've got more. Trump's name did not appear in anything. And did Trump appoint you because of this? No, not in the least bit. Resignation was my choice. And I resigned because it was time. But what about his sweetheart deal? Why did you give him that smoking deal that gave his co-conspirators blanket immunity against any prosecutions? He says, well, pursuant to the non-prosecution agreement, Epstein was permitted work release while serving his sentence. Is that correct, Alexander? So I would not say that that was pursuant to the NPA, to the agreement that we signed. We had assurances on multiple levels that it would be, quote unquote, continuous confinement. And remember, this guy was working with the feds, and they ultimately had him plead to state level charges. And so the state was promising him these things, according to him. One of the issues that you may or you may want to talk about or not, is I think the state turned out to be an unreliable partner, says the feds. And OPR did a 300-page report on this. And there are some conclusions that, quite honestly, are critical of me that I will agree with. And one of those was I relied on, by approving a state resolution, which was the state plea deal. I partnered with the state attorney and a Palm Beach sheriff that was an unreliable partner. Maybe Epstein had them bought off. We had an assurance that he would be in continuous confinement. We were told multiple times that he would be in continuous confinement. He got work release from the Palm Beach sheriff under a factual situation that's sketchy at best. I don't remember all the details, he says, but I think his work release was at an institution that had just been incorporated, something along those lines. Yeah. Like OnlyFans LLC. That was the Palm Beach's sheriff's decision. When we found out about it, we objected. We objected in writing. We objected fully. And so that was all done under the authority of the state. We thought he was going to be locked up, but it was a state deal and the state's bent and just let him out. Now, this is a separate and apart from how it was finally served. Because the idea of work release was something that none of us contemplated. I mean, we had assurances that he would not get that. All of us were shocked. We were upset about it. And had we known that he was going to get work release, this plea deal would not have gone forward because what we contemplated was continuous confinement. And in terms of the decision to reduce the sentence by a substantial amount, what was his leverage? Why did the government agree to it? He says, I can't speculate 20 years after the fact what the leverage was. What the government gained is to have Epstein, have him go to jail. And I understand the 18 and the 24, but to have him actually plead guilty and say he abused these victims and go to jail and send a signal to Palm Beach when these prosecutions hadn't happened, that you can't get away with this, was a win. Now, I understand it's viewed very differently now. Yeah. And had we known back then what we know now, it would have proceeded along a different route. And I understand along the way that the victims weren't fully informed for reasons that our office acted in the best motive, but that left them feeling that we weren't forthright. I get all that. But having him go to jail was a big deal. And having him register and tell the world, look, he's a sex offender, that matters. It didn't. It didn't matter at all. Everybody kept hanging out with him like Bill Gates. Now, his lead attorney told OPR that her office took the allegations very seriously. It's an organized scheme to involve young girls by offering them money. However, she said, although Epstein's behavior was reprehensible, I'm limited by the state statutes as to what I can charge. There were many issues involving victim witnesses that, to my mind, in consultation with the prosecutors, and she goes on to say that there was an element of solicitation. And so Acosta says, so I want to be crystal clear. Lest I be taken out of context or lest I be clipped on this, no one in our office ever thought that the victims were anything less than victims. Okay. No thought that they were, the idea that they were involved as anything other than victims did not cross the mind of a soul. But the fact that the state's attorney's office had, quote unquote, great consternation because they prosecuted women in these situations at the time does not reflect at least how some people in the Palm Beach community thought, and does reflect to some degree at least what some jurors would think, and does reflect at least to some degree what some of the issues would be if we went forward. So in other words, like the women were prostitutes or something, like they were complicit in it. They were not as much victims. Ultimately, the trial was a crapshoot, and we just wanted the guy to go to jail. Okay, so the state comes out like we have great consternation about this. Like some of the women who are victims are bad victims, and they're not going to go. It's not going to go over well. So we don't want to prosecute it because we might lose. So like, okay, well, if the victims are all terrible, then it's like, how can the victims be terrible if they're underage women? Okay. Ultimately, the trial was a crapshoot. Give me a break. Okay, so thank you for all of that. Appreciate all the context. Blah blah blah. All right. So, well, what about the deal? He explained that. And the deal was about getting him in jail. But the bottom line, ultimately, out of 172 pages of Acosta deposition, no contact between Trump and Acosta, no link between Trump and Epstein. In the case, Democrats just keep pumping everybody for that information, but it's not in there. Now, they released the full transcript, and it has been scoured by a bunch of very sharp people looking to connect the dots. And some dots were interestingly connected between this dude and Jeffrey Epstein. You know this judge, Bruce E. Reinhart, magistrate judge out of Florida. He's the same judge who back in 2022 approved the raid of Mar-a-Lago, Trump's residence, and the classified documents scam. You remember this one? We covered the case with the not a real boy, Jack Smith, who got obliterated on both of his cases, lost both of those. Totally pathetic because he's a loser. But Reinhart was the dude who approved the search warrant that Jack Case inherited. Raided Trump's house, went through Melania's bedroom. She's very meticulous, as the president has explained, and went through her drawers because they're sick freaks over there. This judge approved it. And now we see some interesting connections between this judge and Epstein himself. Politico's even reporting on it, saying the judge who approved the Mar-a-Lago search represented clients linked to Epstein and more. We also see the federal judge who signed off on this drew scrutiny. The judge, known for his meticulous nature, is well respected in Palm Beach. He's contributed to both Democrats and Republicans. Now, Trump lawyer Christina Bobb told Politico that Bruce Reinhart signed off on the warrants and agents took a dozen boxes out. Christina Bobb was there during the raid. His decision to grant the warrant turned into a big problem. I was saying, how can you approve the raid of a former president? One local prosecutor described Reinhart as well respected and more. Former prosecutor and defense attorney, blah, blah, blah. Reinhart earned a law degree from Pennsylvania, worked as a federal prosecutor. Law 360 reported that he agreed to a request by Google that the tech giant be awarded attorney's fees. Finance records shows he donated $1,000. State records show more. And this article is actually pretty terrible. But let me show you. Let me see if I can find something else on this. Well, there's more details in that. Let's take a look at what else we saw. Yes. Headline USA had a great post. It's been known for years that this judge who issued the warrant in 2022 once worked for Epstein. He even joined his legal team, apparently, after serving the U.S. Attorney's Office that prosecuted him in the mid-2000s. But that's not all. On Friday, the Oversight Committee released a transcript of its interview with Acosta that we just read, who signed off on the plea deal. The transcript reveals that Reinhart not only worked as an attorney for Epstein, he shared office space with him. Reinhart incorporated his private practice called Bruce Reinhart PA in 2007, listed his address at 250 Australian Ave. Exactly 1 week later, Epstein incorporated an organization called the Florida Science Foundation at the same address, which is also the office of his former lead attorney called Jack Goldberger. Isn't it just amazing how incestuous it all is? Epstein would go on to work at the Florida Science Foundation while serving his 13-month release that Acosta and the local Florida police prosecutors gave to him. That is his work company. What's widely been described as a sweetheart deal, and here you can see articles of incorporation. Here's the place of business, 250 Australian Ave. This is Epstein's Florida Science Foundation. All these things are such scams, man. These not-for-profits, these non-profits, they do them all over the place. They're scams. Not all of them. I mean, there are great non-profits that do great things. Shout out to ericshouse.org. But many of them are set up as just money, laundering scams. So great report over there from Headline USA. This is the judge. And Alexander Acosta saying, yeah, they're pretty close together. Issued the warrant. Has been around forever. Friday, they released the documents. Epstein would go on to work there for 13 months. Acosta said, okay, so you've just disclosed something that I did not know. I knew that he had left to work for Epstein while his case was pending. I did not know that he was the one that filed those articles of incorporation. Wow. Much of the plea deal, and much of the deposition is talking about the plea deal and Trump, but it's all connected, man. The judge who sent the feds in to go raid Trump was the lawyer for Jeffrey Epstein and worked in the same building as him. And for some reason, thought it was appropriate to issue a search warrant that allowed the FBI to conduct a raid with precautions to use lethal force and send in a bunch of armed agents into President Trump's private residence. So obviously, there are some strange things that are happening here, but more records come out. Trump's exonerated. He's not in it, as far as the original prosecutor had to say. And the judge was. So some people feel like this is a useful attack against President Trump, but I think more and more as the information gets revealed, we're going to see Democrat operatives and fingerprints all over the place that point to something much deeper going on. But we'll keep our eye on this one, my friends. Thank you for subscribing and joining as we do. All right, my friends, what a beautiful Monday stream it has just been. If you're just joining us, quick recap on what we talked about. Major victory out of the Ninth Circuit. Happy to see this, saying that the president actually does have the lawful authority to deploy troops into regions that are needing them. Nice decision from the Ninth Circuit. We have a dissent and a concurring opinion. I think we'll see a split with some other circuits, and ultimately the Supreme Court will come in and weigh in on this, but or maybe not. Maybe they'll just, well, if there's a split, they'll have to. But here is some good news out of the Ninth Circuit, and so National Guard probably suiting up, ready to hit those streets in Portland, baby. Have a good time, fellows. We also talked about the Comey case. His lawyer now getting caught in the thick of it. His attorney is called Patrick Fitzgerald, who had a very close connection in some way, shape, or form to the to the Comey allegations that Comey lied. Comey was asked about disclosing materials that he should not be disclosing to people who should not have them, and he was doing that. Lied to Congress about it. One of those recipients is his current lawyer. Back in 2017, he was getting these emails. Now his attorney is the same dude. They already broke Trump's attorney-client privilege with his attorney, Evan Corcoran, when he was being prosecuted. Maybe they'll do the same thing here. Then we talked about the Epstein saga. Oversight Committee dropping some transcripts. They asked the original Epstein prosecutor, Alexander Acosta, about this repeatedly. And he said, there's no Trump in there. Stop asking about it. But they have nothing else to talk about. And Epstein, for them, is their last grasp at relevance for a failing, dying political party. So it's been a great stream, my friends, but now it's time to hear from you. And I hope your week is off to an awesome start. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for subscribing to our channel if you haven't already done so that we never miss you again. We had a great members only stream this morning too. What did we talk about this morning? Oh yeah, some of the No Kings fallout and that psycho lady who was mocking Charlie Kirk yesterday. Lots of nonsense out there over the weekend. We got some great donos in the house. Great to have you here. All of our beautiful friends. Yes, baby. Say hello to your majesty. His honorable, the supreme leader, his majesty, King President Trump. Great to have you. What's up, Sheila Pooh? Sheila the Pooh, a million hugs to you. Thank you, Sheila. Look at this. 10 new Membo friends. And YouTube Membos. We're going to see if we can... Oh, dang. There's a new feature on YouTube. So I can now, I think, switch this to a members only live stream. And I don't know how that's going to work, but we're going to play around with it. So we are going to, I believe, not have to go to a separate feed on YouTube, which is pretty cool. All right, Sheila the Pooh, thank you. Maynard, welcome. Christine McCoy. Yannick Gioris, what's up? Element is here. CK Taylor, BNS is joining us. Aronius1, Beach Life, Lock-Picking Chess Player. Man, that sounds like a smart person. Jason Asby, all gifted membos, courtesy of Sheila Pooh. A million hugs to you. Thank you, Sheila. Very nice to have you. Hey, what's going on? Sassy Gemini. Hey, Rob, I'm a little embarrassed to have to admit this, as I believed I had this document about a pretrial publicity in Tyler Robinson. It turns out, since it pertains to the gag order, it's very hard to obtain unless one is an attorney or something. I do have 13 other docs, but that is not one of them. Andrea Burkhart got the document and reviewed it on her channel. Man, shout out. Awesome. So Andrea Burkhart, shout out. Another YouTubing attorney right here. Charlie Kirk murder gag order review. Yeah, awesome. Yeah, I couldn't find. So yeah, the Utah courts are very difficult. They don't publish a lot of documents. So go over to Andrea's channel to see what the gag order looks like in this matter. Awesome. Thank you, Sassy Gemini. What's up, T-Mac? Illinois is at SCOTUS. Look under Trump. Are they there on the National Guard stuff? Are we already there at the Supreme Court? Well, golly. All right, cool, man. That's good. So then we'll have this settled sooner than I was anticipating. It's nice to see that. Good. Well, and the Ninth Circuit can come in and weigh into that equation. Thank you, T-Mac. I did not know that Illinois is already there. Off-label podcast. Black blocker? That's their words, not mine. It's a tactic to dress all in black with a mask so no one can confidently ID you in court. Oh. I thought it was like a 350-pound African-American lineman or something like that. You know? Thank you, Off-Label. Great channel right next door. Alan is the bestest. What's up, Alan Harkin? Alan, always such generous, my friend. Whenever Trump wins, an angel gets its wings. It's true. I think it's in the Bible. Whenever Robert is a commentator, 2 angels get their wings. That's also in the Bible. Okay, that's blasphemous. Okay. You are superb in all you do, bringing us bona fide, informative dish. Thank you. Thank you, Alan. Super nice of you, my man. Thanks for watching over on Rumble and for the fun comments. Angels get their wings. What is that? Isn't that something like when something dies or something, an angel gets their wings? Or like when you tip over something? Anyways, it's a great comment. Thank you, Alan. Lots of angels and lots of winning. It's good for everybody. Thank you, Alan, for the nice dono. Great to have you here. Hey, what's up? S. Quinn. It's talking about linemen again. Black linemen. Tailbacks or linebackers. Black bloc is the attire a TIF wears. All black, no identifying logos, helmets, masks, etc. Using umbrellas to shield themselves from non-lethal pepper bullets and being seen. Yeah, I don't want to give them any ideas, and incompetence is to our benefit, but I feel like if a group of me and bros were like going to get together and like go attack a federal building, like actually do that, right? Which I think they are. Like, I think that's the end game. It's like to take over the building or to, like, if that is your goal, your methodology is not good. So is that really your goal? Are you just incompetent? Why is your methodology so bad? Honestly, like on this channel, if we got 200 bros who wanted to go take over a federal building, like legitimately, right? Not that I'm like a, combatant or something like that, but I'm not going to come with sticks and laser pointers, right? So I just don't like, is their end game? Like the math doesn't math. Something doesn't add up. Do they actually want to take over the building? It certainly seems like they do. Are they just incompetent? They're just idiots? Are they scared of guns or something? I don't really know. I hope it does not escalate, but it just doesn't make a lot of sense. Hey, S. Quinn, thank you for that. Spelling error. It's called Antifa, not TIFF. Oh yeah, there you go. It's the attire that Antifa wears. We were able to kind of, I think, put that together. But it's just a fun phrase, right? S. Quinn, thank you for the donos and for being here. NY, what's up? I recommend Andy No's book. Portland PD and local government is infiltrated with Antifa-aligned individuals. I think that's probably a good explanation. If Antifa are communists, violent revolutionary communists who are trying to burn buildings down, and we have other communists in positions of power, why would they want to stop them? They're their comrades, right? Atlas, Acid Burn, and AI Atlas in the house, bringing in 5 new Membo friends. What's up? Welcome aboard. Marlene, Jay Aborto, David Gray, Sherman, and BJ Bumblebee in the house. Karen is my name. Great to have you. Sean Quinn, yes, FPS is federal, not Portland. You gave PPD due credit. Thank you for that. Yeah, Sean Quinn, my mistake on that. A lot of acronyms. Sometimes I get them transmogrified. Sean Quinn, thank you. Trino Galaxy. I guess even the Ninth Circuit can get it right. Yeah, and they was 2 for 2 on that one now. Because it's accurate. It's the law. Like, it's not even a complicated case, but these other judges have to get all cutesy with it. Cut off the days, cut off the months, and rig it. King of Biltong. You know Biltong over from BiltongUSA.com. Have you been there lately? Did you know they also specialize in imported foods and candies? Who loves a good candy? Check out Biltong USA for a great selection and go over there. Use code Robert. You're going to save 10% off too. And you're going to get your creatine, baby. Severus, what's up, Severus? Thank you, King of Biltong. Severus is here. Bringing in Matthew Sprouse. Second word. That's a tough one. Rachel Hope Bryantenstein Engelhart. What's up, Rachel Hope? Question everything. Julia Arnold, a.k.a. Grandma Goo, is in the house. Good to have you, Grandma. Severus, thanks for bringing in 5 new membos, and thanks for being here. Good to see you. Hope your week is amazing. FD Man. Patty Fitzgerald may be on the hook with Comey. Comey's lucky he's not on the hook for 8647. Comey should be prosecuted along with all of the other people who aided in his criminality. NY says Democrats and liberals cheat and need these feel-good lies because many feel increasingly in the minority. Yeah, and we didn't spend any time on the dissent on this on this great decision from the Ninth Circuit, but apparently the dissent, I saw Kyle Chaney post an excerpt from it. See if we can find it. I think it's at the end. Just they're just such bloggers. They should just start, a blog. Here you go. Yeah, here it is. Final paragraph from this dissenter. We have come to expect a dose of political theater in the political branches. Drama designed to rally the base or rile or intimidate in political opponents. We may expect a measure of bending, sometimes breaking the truth. By the design of the founders, the judicial branch stands apart. Give me a break. Stop sniffing yourself. We rule on facts, not on supposition or conjecture, and certainly not on fabrication or propaganda. These judges are nuts, dude. Do you think you're not a human being who is immune to fabrication or propaganda? We endeavor to rule on facts and stuff, but you're not even talking about facts. You're talking in platitudes. I urge my colleagues on this court to vacate this order before the illegal deployment of troops under false pretenses can occur. And above all, I ask those watching this case unfold to retain faith in our judicial system for just a little longer. Give me a break. Who is this whiny judge? What a joke. This is a court of appeals judge. Our justice system is breaking. Just hold on a little longer. Spare us, okay? Just so dramatic. All right, Comey. Yeah, NY. Comey, FD man. So they write that stuff to make themselves feel better. And they all share it around. They're just crazy. FD man. Comey leaks more than an excited somebody in the middle of something. FD man. Cloture is a parliamentary procedure used in legislative bodies to end debate on a proposed measure and proceed to a vote, often to overcome a filibuster, a tactic where extended debate is used to delay. Thank you for that, FD man. Congressional education in the House. It takes 60 votes to end cloture. Right now, the Dems are voting no to invoke cloture. Yeah, so shutdown will continue. Schumer needs to cloture his booty and open the government from FD man. Lots of spicy comments today, FD man. Hey, Christina, 3 months as a membo. First month's the hardest. Gets easier from there. 3 months in, so, things are settling down. I appreciate you. Sorry I'm late today. Well, that's okay. It's Monday, and the internet was broken. But I'm going to keep an eye on you now, moving forward. Thank you for being here, Christina. I appreciate you back. Thanks for being a member. Thank you for joining us. And thank you for bringing a note today on your tardiness. We won't mark you down. We'll let this one go. FD man, Queen Cackling Comrade Kamala. That's a good one. Does anyone remember her commie comrade give her that title during the election? Gosh, FD man. I can't read that. Mark Shaw. Hey, wait a minute. Comey's defense is claiming a subordinate of the president can declassify material, ... Wait for it. ... That's a throwback to Ketanji. He's writing like a Supreme Court justice right now who puts that in to her dumb opinions. But Trump just was prosecuted because he couldn't declassify material? What a load of crap. Great comment, Mark. Yeah. And Comey was not the president, not even close. Trump was the president. He's got declassification. He's got presidential records. He is the president. They're his documents by operation of the Constitution. It says so in there. The president is entitled to his documents, to his documents in writings. It's in the Constitution somewhere. What a load of crap. It is true. Yeah. And then Comey, he gets to make the judgment calls about what's classified and what's not. He can leak certain stuff to the media, but not other stuff. Maybe somebody else has a difference of opinion on what that classification it actually is. So did he declassify it, or did he just say it was not classified? Because those are not the same things. Now, FD man, Dems are getting a lot of hot dogs. Fanny is. Oh my gosh, FD man. Okay, hey, it's the Munkets. Tony, hey, Munkets, what's up? Andrea Caceres in the house. What's up, Andres? Andres, sorry about that, Andres. Andres, not it's Andres. Good to have you, Andres. Mike Smith, what's up, Bravo 6? Jordan Sheen in the house. And Katania Nana, all gifted membos, courtesy of Tony Hey Munkets. Hey, it's the Munkets. Good to have you, Tony Hey. Look at this handsome boy, Tony Hey Munkets. You rock. 5 new membos. What's up, membos? Fonzie is here. Terry Haggard. What are these new emojis over here? This looks like a little, I don't know what that is. Looks like a lot of different things. I want to say an owl, a snowman, an airplane, a submarine. I don't know what it is. Received a gift. Hey, Ha-Haima Decoy, Terry Haggard. What's up, Fonzie? Tom Forsyth and Colm McDonough, all gifted membos, courtesy of Tony Hay Munkets. Great to have you, friends. Thank you, Tony Hay, for bringing them in. Dark Rogue is here. The old name for black blocker was brown shirt. Yeah. So the colors have changed. Brown shirt, black blocker. Yeah. Thank you, Dark Rogue. Doan says brown and black shirts were fascist, but you're still correct. Well, I think the Antifa nuts are actually fascist. I mean, they're communist, really, is ultimately what they are. But they've got more fascist tendencies, which is dictatorial control of the body politic than MAGA right does. What's up? Thank you, Dark Rogue. Great comment. Will Crump. The Ninth Circuit win in Oregon. This will only help Trump's SCOTUS appeal from Chicago. Okay, so Trump filed that to SCOTUS. I don't think we've covered that. 1 judge, no National Guard. 2nd judge, no fence either, nothing. So they have already taken that up. Man, did we not talk about that? I don't think we did. Eric Sean, once they go to the Ninth Circuit and it hears the Portland case en banc, they're going to overturn the 3-panel decision, aren't they? I don't know. I mean, they didn't do that in Newsom, right? So it would overturn Newsom and this one? Yeah, I don't know. I hope not. I think it's the right ultimate decision. And I think SCOTUS will reverse it back if they do. FD man. It is loser Democrats, Art Street Theater, Portland's Antifa are losers, and there are a lot of communist billionaires. Yeah. Every time a bell rings, an angel gets his wings. Yeah, It's a Wonderful Life. That's what it's from. Every time a bell, I was thinking like every time a dog dies or something, but every time a bell rings, that's much better than a dog dying. It's a Wonderful Life, 1946, but we won't watch it. Thank you, Rub Some Dirt on It, aka Galaxy Whirlpool. What's up, Dave P? Rob, you have to listen to this song by Red Peters after the stream. You will never be able to keep a straight face when you say the name Patrick Fitzgerald again. From Dave P. Well, we heard a joke today. What was it about gay lawyers? What was it? Patrick Fitzgerald and Gerald Fitzpatrick? Why did it have to be gay lawyers, though? Why couldn't it just be like a law firm? You just call it law firm. Just call it, hey, welcome to Fitzpatrick, Gerald and Fitzpatrick. So what would the firm name be? I don't know. I don't get it. But David P., thank you for that. And we'll keep the song opened up. What is this? Hey, the Rubos are here. Hey, in celebration of Rob and Alexis's marriage, which is happening, oh my goodness, 1 week from today, we're going to be back on this show, and your boy is going to be a married man. Going to have a ring on this finger. So this is the last Monday, probably. There's still a lot that could happen between now and Saturday. There's a lot. But everything should go smoothly. Probably will. In celebration of Rob and Alexis's marriage, we are delighted to offer the Watching the Watchers family An exclusive 35% discount. Man, this is the best salt you've ever had. I don't know what kind of salt you put on your food, but if it's not rubossaltshop.com salt, well, then I don't know what the heck's going on over there in that household. But premium Rubos salt, man, it's amazing. Visit rubossaltshop.com. Use code WTW35 at checkout. Rubos, you guys are amazing. That is so awesome of you to do that. Look at that, my friends. It's good salt. It's all we use. It comes from the oceans of France. Read the label. It's on there. So check it out. RubosSaltShop.com. You guys are amazing. The Rubos are awesome people. They have the best prayers. Exclusively for our fam. Thank you for doing that. Capital W, lowercase t, capital W 35. RubosSaltShop.com. Awesome of you to do that. Rubos, you guys are amazing. Thank you for that. And we love your salt. We really do. It's good. My mom does too. It's good stuff. So check it out, my friends. RubosSaltShop.com. Rick D is here. Jumping out of an airplane. Not yet. Sorry about that, Rick. You're recovering. Photo emerges of what VP Harris was actually working on in Air Force Two during the campaign. Wow. Kamala Harris. She did it. She did the whole maze. I mean, it's a crossword puzzle, but she did it. She got from one all the way to the end, and she didn't get blocked in, not even once. Wow. That's great. Definitely could have run our country. E. Texley, here's an actual question. Let's see if I can come up with an answer. Does anybody know if the shutdown at some time will interfere with the National School Lunch Program? That is a USDA program. If the free food stops, that sounds politically nuclear. Yeah, it's a good question. Yeah, it's a real good question. I don't know the answer to that. I can't even make one up. But yeah, there are certain things that I think will cause a ruckus, and people will say, nah, okay, that's enough of that. What is it yet, though? I don't know. I mean, a lot of the normal things like paying the military, paying air traffic control, paying the FBI, but that's all being covered, apparently. Those are the normal, leverage points that you can squeeze action out of Congress. But the kid stuff, it's, troops for sure. Like, you're not going to we have to pay our troops. Get the money, get the government open and pay our troops. But if they're being paid, I think the next option is the kids. T-Mac. What's up, T-Mac? Yeah, it is a National Guard case. It went to Amy Coney. Oh, I did see that. Amy Coney Barrett on Friday. She gave them. That's right. Yeah, it was a quick response. She did not stay it, right? That's right. We did see that. I think I was waiting for the response today. Oh, man. Thank you, T-Mac. Yeah. I did see that, I think last week, right? Thank you for that, T-Mac. We'll probably cover that this week. FD Man, does anyone realize that all races have swear words that label them? Weird. Can anyone tell me what those words are, but only one is spoken to another without fear? Well, I think if you're of a certain persuasion, you have some license to say the thing. A white guy saying that word's not good, but if you're a black guy saying it to another black guy, it's okay because you have license for that. But I don't think white people have much license at all for anything. Except we can call ourselves bad words, I guess. Hey, John, but we just don't do that as much, Well, we do, but it's not a racially charged word, right? Like we don't walk around, hey, cracker. At least I don't know. Hey, John Nabel, what's up? But I can say that without getting canceled because I'm a white guy. Hey, Trump should delay the National Guard by a day and have the ATF surround the place from half a mile. And when the fireworks start to move in and arrest them all. Yeah, I mean, these are like armed groups of violent attackers. Call them terrorists, call them invaders, call it a rebellion. Should all be rounded up and all prosecuted immediately. I mean, they went after 1,500 J6ers. Remember that? Spent 4 years screaming at everybody about insurrection, kicking in people's doors. It was a ridiculous time. And that was for a 4-hour protest for a stolen election in a building that should have actually been secured. And we saw tons of footage of people tapping each other on the shoulders. Cops, hey, tap the cop on the shoulder, gets out of the way. Everybody goes in, hit everybody with trespass. This has been a sustained attack for months, trying to burn the building down. That didn't happen on January 6th. So stop allowing this stuff to fester and, let's see a nice response. But I think we're seeing it. And Trump is playing it smart, going through the courts, complying and not raising too much of a ruckus. Yeah, what's up? OTR. Hey, yeah, great comment. Great show, Rob. I have to say I'm a lot happier with month 9 than month 6 with this administration. God bless. I agree with you. I agree with you. I actually had, even not long ago, like, more criticisms of Cash and Halligan. Like, there was still a Robert Mueller prosecution that was going on, and Halligan just dismissed that today. So it's like, okay. And I think we were pretty fair about that and pretty accurate. We said, okay, give it like 9 months, give it 10 months. You need 3 months to get your legs under you, to get your sea legs. You need another 6 months to actually bring the cases. Then you'll indict around month 9. And we're in October. We got 3 indictments. So I think we're just ramping up. It's like anytime you take over any agency or administration or whatever. Hey, Mini Tika, thanks for sharing us over on Rumble. Yeah, we're super close to 70 over on Rumble. That's awesome. And thank you, Neuro D, for sharing the locals. You guys are great. Yeah, thank you for posting that stuff over on X. My friends, thanks for following us over on X and checking out the show over there. It's great. It's been a great Monday, and it's going to be a beautiful week. So thanks for being here and for being amazing. Okay, we're going to try something new, YouTube friends. As we wrap it up, I'm going to press a new button, and then it should turn it into a members only stream, but I don't really know what's going to happen. I just saw this. This will be our first time testing it, because this is our first public 2 members only stream. So stick around. The after party should kick on. I think we're going to see what happens, but locals friends, also hang tight. We're going to come on back. We're going to have a members only after party. We're going to debrief and say, and what's up to everybody in the house. Yeah. FD man, big, beautiful bill gives the president and his cabinet the power to cut already funded programs and to fund essential programs. Dems programs are going to be cut to fund the essentials. Nazi is said to white people without fear. Yeah, they say that all the time. But I think most of those labels have no effect at all. Basically all of them. Very little effect. I don't like being called dishonest or deceptive or something like that. But if you're just going to be but that's like a personal attack. So there are still words and that have power and meaning. I'm not saying that. I'm saying if you're you have an accurate word, you have an accurate label, that can still have some impact on a person. But these people who just called you all the names, racist, xenophobic, transphobic, Nazi, racist, bigot, whatever. Call me whatever you want. Nobody really cares. Have fun with it. It doesn't matter because you don't matter. Hey, what's up? Villa Plot. Yeah, hey, this is when we were doing meatballs. Remember that? That was from our meatball stream. Yeah, for Membos. I hope you are devoting enough time to the lovely Alexis while Membos appreciate all the content. I hope so too. And we're going to be getting married Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So Friday, we're going to have an early show for sure. And then we're going to have all weekend together getting married. It's going to be an amazing time. That's my beautiful bride-to-be, my handsome beautiful fiance. She's female. And we're excited about that. Nicholas J, USA. Nicholas, welcome aboard. All right, we'll see you on the after party. Hopefully that's coming up soon if I can figure out this button. Kelly Selnow, Tony Hay Muckets. Thank you, Kelly Selnow. Austin, Batman is here. Dog Billiard, Angela Salatino, and Maddie, all gifted membos on the day, courtesy of Tony Hay Muckets. And that's great news because we're about to press this button and see what happens. So we're going to play the normal outro, but if you're a YouTube membo, stick around because I'm going to press a button and we'll see what happens. Otherwise, my friends, it has been a beautiful stream. Thank you for being here. Thanks for all the love. Thanks for the support. Thanks for subscribing to the channel. Thanks for liking the video. Thanks for sharing the show with a friend or family member. And for being amazing. We're going to pause here for the evening. Before we do, big shout outs to our amazing mods and meme smiths. Thank you so much to Donut Mind Me, to John, to K-Bean, to Carrie B, to Neuro D, Janek, Dog Digger, Elliot, Just Rhonda, Geegum Geegum. Very, very grateful for you and for all of the support here from everybody, my friends. We'll pause here for the evening. We're coming back tomorrow and we're going to get into it again. But in order to do that appropriately, we are going to need to see you right back here so that together with your help, we can shine that big, beautiful spotlight of accountability and transparency down upon our system with the hope of finding justice. Make it a beautiful night, my friends. Sleep very well. We'll see you right back here tomorrow. Bye-bye.
Thanks for watching, my beautiful friends. Now it's that time where the stream must end. We brought the heat with every chat and line. Together we exposed corruption. One more time we dove in the truth where the media hides. Lit up the lies with receipts on all sides. The fight isn't over, but we made them sweat. We ain't done yet, no, not just yet. Because together we are watching the watchers. Truth on our side. Watching the watchers. We won't be denied. Watching the watchers. Eyes open wide. Fighting for freedom with nothing to hide. Drop a like and don't forget to share. And bring a friend who's ready to care. Tomorrow's lies are just today's news, but here we see through the scripted ruse. Together we are watching the watchers shine in the light. Watching the watchers defending what's right. Watching the watchers still